Right, well here we are at my mate Anton's place, and he's got this tool and cutter grinder which he picked up pretty darn cheap. He got lucky on it. So let's see if we can get it working and see what condition it's in. Yes, I'd never heard of this machine before. It's, as you can see, there's really not much about these tool and cutter grinders online. But the Wiki's Commons does have a couple of pages from the original brochure. Oh good, we've got a nameplate here. Model number 1, my guess is this company only ever made it to model number 1. I'm going to guess this is the 820th machine made in 1962. They probably went out of business is because this was just a much more complicated, much more expensive competitor to the Clarkson. For example, the Spindle's got tapers to mount the wheels, which means that once you've got the wheels running true and counterweighted, you can take them off, put them on, take them off, put them on. Don't have to redress them every time. That's a big advantage. The Clarkson shaft is just a 1/2 inch cylinder. Let's take a look here under the skirt. This is definitely not metric. Luckily this is not tight enough for the 9mm to damage the points. Man, that's a nice little mechanism with the lightly sprung tension wheel. The bearings feel nice and smooth. In fact, all of it feels very nice. Yeah, the belt doesn't feel too frayed or anything, and it's a cloth belt. I really like this lifting mechanism. One, having a lever lock rather than a hex bolt like the Clarkson does. And also the worm wheel is much nicer than just the screw into a nut that Clarkson used. Cool thing about these tool grinders is having these offset tables that you can put a bit of angle on. Let's unlock it and see what it does. Might pop that right off and just give it a bit of a clean up underneath. Oh, that's it. Well, glad I took that off. It looks like there's a bit of rust forming underneath it. Oh yeah, definitely. So why was a grease nipple sitting down there in a hole? So with this table a bit cleaned, you can see there's a bit of movement in that screw. Let's just give that a quick tightening. Okay, that's better. Now the table traverse, looks like someone smashed off this handle and just replaced it or extended it. Still runs quite nicely, but there is a fair bit of backlash. It looks like this has got a much longer travel on the table than the Clarkson does, whereas the table traverse on the Clarkson is a rack and pinion. Here we've got a chain drive, and there's a fair bit of slop in that chain. So let's see, it looks like there's a bit of adjustment here. So maybe we can just tighten up that chain a little. Oh, that's much nicer, no backlash in that now. Another improvement over my Clarkson is that somebody's put these leather way covers over the cross slide. That's brilliant. I really need to do this job sometime on the Clarkson, but just never get around to it. Let's drop them off and see what's under there. It's missing one washer here. Now I never really understood why tool and cutter grinders, which have these swiveling table assemblies, never have any sort of degree scale or detent or bugger off truck. They never have any form of detent or index mark or anything so you can set it up quickly to a 90-degree point. Another really nice thing on this Bamkin is that you've got this big lever, nice cast lever here, for locking the rotation of the whole table assembly. That's a bolt on the Clarkson. So now the main table's running nice and smoothly. Let's take a look at this cross slide, because here we've got almost a whole turn of backlash before it starts moving. So I need to see why that is. Right, let's drop this whole assembly off and see if that makes a difference. Oh, that's very loose. It's not a good sign. Maybe that backlash is just in the bearing block not being tight. So the cross slide wheel is also an improvement over the Clarkson because it actually has a scale on it. Another job I really need to get round to doing on the Clarkson, engraving its one. But you can see that that bearing block, it's just a plain bearing block, and that's probably the most of that backlash. Hopefully if I loosen off the hand wheel, I can snug that up and take most of that play out of it. Okay, so I've undone the screw on the hand wheel, but I'm probably going to have to press this wheel off. But luckily, the press department's looking pretty good. So there's quite a good lip here where it looks like the lead screw's kind of worn into the bearing block a bit. So that's probably part of the backlash. What's the slop in the gibs like? So let's take a look here. There's a little bit of slop there. And maybe we can pull this off, or probably we'll have to loosen the gibs a little. Yeah, it tightens up at the end. So to get the table off, I'm going to need to just back off these gib screws a bit. Oh, that one's already loose. Of course, these are Whitworth, and I don't have Whitworth, but they're only locking nuts. I really don't like it when somebody does a machine overhaul and paints over adjustment screws like that. That's kind of lame. The 4 gib screws on the saddle, that's nice. Clarkson scrimped and only used 3 on mine. There we go. Right, with that table flipped, we can sort of see the whole drive mechanism. The chain ends up attached to a bronze block here, which screws from the upper side. So I guess to remove the saddle from the top slide, we just have to undo that block, and then we could just run the thing off the end. It's quite interesting that this table only has a single-sided dovetail. So it's obviously designed with only light grinding forces in one direction. Now the cross-slide lead screw. Yep. So most of the wear is in that nut by the looks of it. Because the screw itself doesn't look that bad. It doesn't have like an obvious real thin necking in the middle. I guess we could just do a quick check with a caliper. 16.6, 16.6. Nothing too scientific there, but it doesn't look like the wear's in the screw. I'm guessing the nut wore out and someone made a new screw for it, but just have to deal with that for now. Don't have time to make a new one of them. Right, let's reassemble this. I'm always at two minds whether to lubricate anything on a grinder, but in this case, because it's pretty close to a maritime environment, you get a bit of salt spray. Plus, Anton's got a fair bit going on at the moment and probably isn't going to use this machine much. I think it's better to keep it well lubricated, more for rust prevention than anything. So let's do that. There's a couple of gib retention features there, so the gib definitely has to go in first. Can't slide it in afterwards. That's how it worked. Right, just need to straighten up this little strip a bit. And now this is a beautiful panel hammer.
I bought that panel hammer from a Snap-on truck in 1993. It came outside the hangar and it was probably about 2 days' pay. $140.
Yeah, luxury tool. It's nice to use, huh? Another thing that's nice is that my dad used to work here at the Napier harbour board. He did a bunch of different jobs, one of which was driving the pilot boat. I used to love going out with that, running next to a big ship with a big swell, waiting for the pilot to climb up a rope ladder. Yep, the days going to Dad's work were my favourites. Another one of his jobs was to be a relieving engineer on one of the tugs, the Mangatea. There's 3 of them working this ship coming in today. You can imagine as like a 10-year-old cycling on my bike after school round to Dad's work and getting to watch these big ships come in or go out on one of the boats. I used to really love this stuff. Some days Dad would be assigned to the ropes crew, helping to berth the ships, and then he used to take the payphone up on board, so occasionally I'd get to go on board the ships as well. That was super cool. Right, let's take a look at this spindle. What we got here is, unfortunately, the retention bolt has been broken off in this end of the spindle. So we're going to have to try and easy out that out, or at least drill it out.
Just move it up a bit. It's not very straight.
Horrible things, huh? I'm sliding on this.
It's pretty damn tight.
Now it's so thin-walled that it's just swaging it out into the threads, isn't it?
What do you think?
What's going to break if we keep going? I mean, the worst thing is the easy out breaks, because the easy out's hardened, isn't it? That would suck. What about with a rattle gun? Huh.
That's not so dramatic, is it?
Oh no. It's out. Woo! Oh, I guess I should put a bit of oil on that table. This is quite interesting that it's got lock screws on both ends, because you would have think you'd only need one. But oh, and one of them's not original either. It's got a wrong size metric washer, and if you want, you can probably turn off the markings to make it look a bit more original. Since 400 volts is the standard 3-phase here, we'll probably have to just re-jumper this back into star. Okay, so that's a bit disappointing. We only have 3 ends of the windings coming out to terminal, so unless strip the whole motor apart, there's no easy way to rewind this to star, and therefore we can't run it on 400 volts. Probably easiest just to get a half horsepower 3-phase VFD and then run single phase 230 to 3-phase 230. So now I've given this a bit of a tune up and it's running a lot more smoothly and got that broken screw out. What sort of accessories do we now have with it? It's kind of a cool stand somebody made up for this, kind of very, very retro. And it's actually the original from Bamkin. Bunch of grinding wheels. Ah, that's good. A couple of nice cup wheels there. Straight wheel. Ah. Guards. Pair of centers, so various fingers for guiding the work. Don't know what that is. I think that's probably some sort of finger as well though, as is that. There's another wheel hub, tool collets, and here's the main bit we need. The universal grinding attachment, with a set of collets to go with it. That looks nice. And a couple of pull tubes. So the most common job you're going to do is like your resharpening end mills. It looks to me like this is for these collets. Then there's a draw tube up the tail end of it to lock the collet.
Yep.
And then you can use one of those little magnetic protractor thingy. Yeah, set your 5 degrees, lock it. And then you'd set your tool horizontal. Get it nice and horizontal. Set up a finger into one of these flutes. Set the tool height. Normally you do this with a cup wheel, because you're almost always working on the front of a cup wheel on these sort of machines. Dress it with a diamond. Then it's just a matter of infeeding, zing, zing, zing. Normally you do your secondaries first. Your 15-degree angle first, then your 5-degree angle. And most of the time that's all you need to dress it. It's just touch up the ends. So there we have it. It's a pretty nice and complete machine. There's a couple of little niggly bits that need to be remade, like making up a new retention bolt to hold the wheel on this side. That'll have to be made on the lathe. But all the major bits are there and it seems to be in nice condition. So it's a shame we couldn't get power on it, but we've got to wait for a VFD to drive that. The main accessories you need are all there and it seems to be in really good condition. So I'm sure Anton's going to have a lot of fun with that one. Thanks a lot for watching.